In this video, we're going to take a look at Luminar 4 versus Luminar AI. In other words, if you have Luminar 4, should you upgrade to Luminar AI? Or if you don't have either and you're trying to decide which one, then should you get Luminar 4 or should you get Luminar AI? We're going to take a look into both of them, compare some of the major features of each of them, and hopefully help you make your determination of what's the best way to spend your money. Hi, my name is William Beem. I am a portrait photographer in Central Florida. If this is your first time here, welcome. We're glad to have you. And if you're coming back, thank you. I really appreciate that. Please take a look at the description below. I do have coupon codes for either version of Luminar. Anything that's on Skylum, it'll help you out with. And there are also some coupon codes down there for some other products such as Topaz and so forth. And you can see a list of some of the tools I use to make my videos if that's of interest to you. All right, so why don't we go ahead and kind of get into this. I'm going to take a quick look at Luminar AI, Luminar 4, and compare some of the major features, what is in some versions and what is not in some versions. All right, let's start off with Luminar 4. I am in the edit window, but actually I kind of want to back up to the catalog view. And there are a couple of noticeable differences, but not important differences in my mind. So for example, the user interface, you can see over here where it says small, medium, or large. That kind of shows you how big are the photos in the grid that you're looking at. You've got your albums, you've got your folders, and all these little shortcuts. If we zoom over to Luminar AI and look at the catalog here, you'll see the same thing, only the difference is small, medium, large. And that, in other words, the view of your grid is just in a different place. Also, you notice that we have a menu over here for catalog templates, which is the same thing as looks in Luminar 4, edit, and export. So all these things exist in both versions. The question is, what else is there that makes it a difference for you? So for example, this doesn't say export, but this is your export option right here. And you have the same export options in both programs. You can search, you can change from, a grid view to a single photo view. And if you want to edit in Luminar 4, you'll see this tab over here. So library, which is catalog in Luminar AI, edit, and info. If we switch over to Luminar AI, then you'll see the templates, which would be the looks from Luminar, are over here. And you'll see that we've got something new. For this photo is a collection of templates that the AI uses based on how it analyzes your photograph and says, these may be good choices for you. So it'll analyze it, it'll recommend some templates, and underneath each collection are individual templates. So with just one click, you can very easily go ahead and kind of change the way your photos look. You'll also have options over here so you can see other templates and you can go on down. So these may not have been recommended to you, but basically you'll see all the categories. And at the very bottom, you can see all categories here and what it's offering. This little slider is kind of like an opacity for the template. So you can take that off or put on, whatever percentage you want. And you can just completely remove any adjustments that you made from templates or from editing. So let's go ahead and switch back to Luminar 4 and we'll click on edit. This is where you're going to see a few things that are similar and a few things that are different. So for example, you'll still have an essentials tab, a creative tab, a portrait tab, and a professional tab. Notice over here you have a canvas and you have layers in Luminar 4. When we take a look at Luminar AI, and we'll click on edit. So here are your familiar essentials, creative, portrait, and pro. All right, so what happened to the canvas? What happened to layers? Let's start off with layers. You cannot add additional layers in Luminar AI. That was an intentional design by Skylum as a performance benefit. The folks at Skylum said that when you add a layer in Luminar 4, it doesn't know what you're going to do with that layer. So it has to load all the modules of anything that you could possibly do. It consumes a lot of resources. It takes time to load all that stuff. And then you only use a portion of what they loaded for whatever effect that you want. In Luminar AI, they decided to do away with that for performance reasons, but they did provide other tools to try and mimic what you may have done with layers in Luminar 4. A lot of people have expressed concern that Luminar AI doesn't have layers. I'm not terribly worried, simply because there are a lot of other programs that we use to edit our photos that do not have layers. If you work in Lightroom, you know that it does not have layers. There are local adjustment brushes, and you have something similar here. Now, that's not to say it's completely identical, that you can do everything that you did in Luminar 4 with layers that you can in Luminar AI. But they've covered, I think, the basis. So if you come down here, you see this local masking in Luminar AI. You can click over here and add a basic or a texture layer. If we go back to Luminar 4 and you want to add a layer, it's going to ask you the same thing. If we click here, is it going to be an adjustment layer, which is kind of like the basic layer that we had, or is it going to be an add an image layer? And also it had this one, create a new stamped layer. And basically what that's saying is, if you've made adjustments on this image, do you want to just kind of merge all those together as a layer on top, kind of like saving your place in your workflow, and create a new layer that looks the same thing but doesn't have all the resources beneath it. So that's what this one is. But basically these two are what you have in the other. If we click on add new adjustment layer, you have your blend mode, you have your mask, and you have luminosity mask. That's another feature that's in Luminar 4 that does not exist and probably will not exist in the near future in Luminar AI. But so you've created a new layer. What can you do with that layer? Well, you can do anything that you have in all of these tools. And then you can decide when you go back to look at that layer, do I want to fade out that adjustment that I made? Do I want to change the blend mode for the adjustment that I made? Or do I want to mask that adjustment in or out of any part of my picture? So that's what you get with layers in Luminar 4. Luminar AI with its local masking, internally, it's kind of like adding another layer. You don't see it as a layer, but you see it. If I add this, you'll see it as a mask. Essentially, that's a layer. But all you can do with that layer is this. You have the option to change the warmth, exposure, contrast, and so forth. You can see on down the list. And you can mask it, whether with a brush, a radial, or a gradient. As I said, there are no more luminosity masks. And that's it. You can add to it. You can click this button to erase. You do not have access to mask in at a different layer of these other elements that are here. All you can do is work with the tools that show up here. That is not as much as you could do in the other one. The trade-off, though, was performance. The other question is, how often do you need to add that layer to do what you want? In most cases, I'd say I can do what I want and get the results that I want in Luminar AI without needing to worry about adding another mask. There may be a couple of differences. So, for example, let's say that I'm working on the portrait tool and I have two faces here. Well, let's go to the face, and let's say I'm working on the eyes and I want to enlarge the eyes. Not only does it enlarge the eyes on the subject that I have here, but if there's another person that enlarges the eyes that I have on the other tool, I can mask this in and out. So, for example, I could erase it off of one of the subjects, but then how do I add another portrait tool to this photograph? As far as I know, I can't. That means I can't adjust one person, create another layer, adjust another person, and then on each of those layers, mask out the person that I don't want affected with the edits that I made. So that is probably the only kind of circumstance, not just with portrait, but any of these tools, where not having layers makes an impact on what I may or may not do. And the other one I would say is if I wanted to do something with a blend mode. But for most of these tools, I probably would not use these with a blend mode. I would probably come over here to local masking. If I had a basic mask, I would probably use some of these exposure or contrast tools and use those on a blend mode. So I would say it covers the majority of what I would do with another layer. There are some exceptions, and I look at my workflow and I think, how often do I need to do that? The answer for me is not very often. You have to be the judge of your own workflow and determine if that really makes a difference to you or not, that you don't have layers. The idea behind Luminar AI was not to work on tools and processes and techniques. The idea was to help you get into your photo, quickly make it look better, and get out. It is not there as what I would call a craftsman tool. You can do a lot of wonderful crafting with it, but I would say it's not something where you're going to go in here and work on it the same way that a lot of professionals do in Photoshop. you can get some results here much faster and just as good as Photoshop will give you without having to do a lot of layers that I would have to do probably in Photoshop. I would say the biggest concern I have between Luminar 4 and Luminar AI is really what's on the future. Luminar 4 is going to have roughly a year more of development. And by development, I mean support. Not new features, not enhancements, but support. In other words, if they find that there's a bug because of an operating system upgrade, they'll go ahead and fix that. If there's a bug in their code that shows up, they'll go ahead and fix that. And it'll have a lifespan of about 1 year from the time this video comes out. Luminar AI is not an upgrade of Luminar 4. For example, the catalog in Luminar 4 will not transfer over to Luminar AI. It is a new and different piece of software, but it is the future, at least as far as Scotland is concerned. If you want to have that upgrade path, then Luminar AI is the one that's going to get new features and keep moving forward. For example, there are a couple of features that are going to be forthcoming in the early part of 2021 for Luminar AI. One of them is called bokeh AI. And bokeh, if you're not familiar, that's the phrase that's given for that soft defocused look behind your subject. In other words, it makes it look like you use an expensive lens wide open. And that's a forthcoming feature. It's not in the product right now, but it is forthcoming. Another one will be an improvement to the sky replacement, which will give you reflections. Let's say if you have water, glass, something that should be a reflective surface, then the sky replacement or Sky AI will show you how to put those reflections in there. I think that's coming in the first quarter. So new features, new tools will come in Luminar AI. Do not expect them in Luminar 4. It will work and it will be supported for about a year, and then it's going to be end of line. Should you upgrade? I would look at it this way. Is there anything that you're doing in Luminar 4 now that you cannot do that you could do in Luminar AI? A couple of those features might be some of the things that we've looked at in some of my previous videos. So for example, a composition AI, it will recommend a composition for you, and you can change your aspect ratio on both of them, but this one will tell you, based on its AI, says, I think this is the best composition for you. Atmosphere AI does not exist inside of Luminar 4. So you can add fog, you can add layered fog, mist, or haze. So if we decide that we want to have some mist on this photo, we can go ahead and bring up the amount, and it'll just kind of bring that in. You can see in the background over here that there's a little mist that's been added in. And you can change the depth so it'll go further down or higher up. So those tools are in Luminar AI. They're not going to be in Luminar 4. Also, you have body AI. So for example, if I want to change the shape of this particular subject, I can pull this down to the left and I kind of plumps her up. If I pull it over to the right, it kind of makes her a bit more slender. And it's one of those things you have to be careful because you can see how, depending on your background, it's warping some of the pixels around it. But it's something that exists here. And it's also something I probably wouldn't use to that extreme. The abdomen is another one. I'm going to bring this up quite a bit. And you can see how it's just going to tuck in her tummy right there. And I found this works very well. But it's not going to be in Luminar 4. So here's my thought. If you're working on Luminar 4, you don't have anything that you need from Luminar AI, such as these new tools, it's going to be supported for another year. I would probably hang on to it and then upgrade if and when I needed a new tool. If you don't have Luminar at all, I would start with Luminar AI. There's no point in starting with a tool like Luminar 4 that's only going to have maintenance for 1 more year, and then you're going to be in a position where if you want to have continued support, you'd need to buy an upgrade license to Luminar AI. So that's kind of my thought. But I would say the decision to upgrade is, don't get emotional about it. It's a tool. Does it solve the problems that you need to solve? If it does, and you have Luminar 4 and it's solving your problems, I wouldn't upgrade. If you like the new tools that are out there, or you have problems that you want to solve that Luminar 4 isn't solving, then I would go ahead and consider upgrading. And if you do, like I said, I have a coupon code in the description below, and that'll save you a little bit of money while you're doing your upgrade. Overall, the tools are very much alike. The AI features in Luminar AI are nice, and I like them. I think they make it much easier for beginners to go in, and not necessarily just beginners, but also people who just need to get a photo done. In other words, let me come back here. I'll go to the catalog, and let's just say that I took this photograph. Well, I did take this photograph, and we're going to go ahead and edit that one. I'm going to come over here to templates probably to start. And I'm going to see what does it recommend for me. And I'm going to look at these things and say, this is kind of an urban shot. I took this, I think this was the metro or whatever the railroad is in Washington, D.C. And I'm going to come down here and I'm going to look at some of these templates. And I might just say, you know what? That's the look I wanted. I'm done. It's that simple. Or you might say, that's close to it, but I want to fade it a little bit. Maybe give this a desaturated look. Maybe I want to come down here and click edit. And then the edits that go with that template are already set. And then you can go add some more if you want to. You can tweak them, you can adjust them. And that will be your way of getting into the photo, doing some processing, and get out. The whole idea behind Luminar AI is to help you get better photos faster, not necessarily worry about your artistic technique using the tools. They're trying to get away from all that technique, and that's why the AI really comes in to help you. So those are my recommendations. I hope you enjoyed that. If you like this video and you found it helpful, please go ahead and share it with a friend. And if you like it enough, please go ahead and click the like button. That lets YouTube know if I'm doing something right. And if you want, go ahead and subscribe and then click the little bell notification icon. You'll be able to see a notice when new videos come out. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next video.